You're listening to Better Live Than Dead.
Welcome, everybody. How's it going? It is May 1st, a day after the NHL Draft Lottery. We know where the Buffalo Sabres will draft. We know who's drafting first overall. But before we get to that, welcome to another BLTD Extracast. I am one half of the hosting team. I am Ryan Wolfe, at Wolfe BLTD on Twitter right now. I should say. I was about to introduce you, and you totally cut me off. I had this wonderful speech planned out, and I was going to say super nice things about you, but you know what? You're good. Brayton is on the line, joining us now. Normally by computer, but today by phone because he's a little busy, but that's okay. He wanted to still get this extra cast done because the picture, it gets a little less foggy after Saturday night's draft lottery. Like I said, we know where the Buffalo Sabres will draft, so that's kind of the key focus for us right now. Real quick before we get started, you can follow Brayton obviously on Twitter at BJWilsonWGR. But before we go anywhere, I want to ask you, Brayton, it's been a couple days. How you doing, man?
Oh, it's good. And, it kind of sucks that we have to podcast, away from each other because there's that delay. And I always just want to be like, you introduce yourself, and then I want to introduce myself. But, one of these days we'll get together and we'll figure this thing out.
Sometime soon, actually, we're going to be doing garbage plates and podcasting, probably at the same time. Because if you die from garbage plate intake, I at least want to have your final words.
I'll give you some good final words too.
Some good hot takes with the garbage plates. Okay, but you've been kind of tearing it up on Twitter this past 24 hours regarding the Buffalo Sabres draft position. And for those who live under a rock, the Buffalo Sabres will draft 8th overall in the upcoming NHL entry-level draft, which is taking place at the First Niagara Center in downtown Buffalo. So the Buffalo Sabres did not move up. They did not move down. They stayed in place. And not bad at all. I mean, I was kind of bummed that they didn't move up because I like excitement. I like a lot of fun. And staying in the same spot wasn't so fun. But do you think... The first question I'm going to ask you, because I'm sure somebody's asking it right now, Brayton, is do you think the Sabres are maybe kicking themselves for that late season run that they went on, or do you think that late season run of kind of a team building run plus an 8th overall pick is more worth it than a higher pick?
I think the late run in the 8th overall was fun as it is, just because we got to see the development of the chemistry between Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart together. We got to see Evander Kane and Ryan O'Reilly for the first time in Sabres uniforms really play some dynamic hockey. We saw other guys like Rasmus Ristolainen starting to develop as a number one center. We saw Zach Bogosian bounce back from a really slow season. We got to see, the line combination of Marcus Foligno, Johan Larsson, and Brian Giunta start to flourish, especially in the second half of the season. And that development there actually helped Larsson re-sign a one-year deal for next year. But, I mean, going back to the end of this season, watching them win, watching them play some very fun hockey is well worth it. And, I wasn't even thinking about draft stock. I mean, I was thinking about it a little bit. I can't lie about that. I was thinking about it a little bit. But, I mean, I'm not gonna say that I was disappointed that the Sabres didn't finish higher up for a higher pick. I think that finishing with some good chemistry was much more worth it than, falling back and, let's say they select 5th in the draft this year. Finishing 8th was well worth it for me.
And, I totally agree with you. I mean, yeah, it would be nice to get the Austin Matthews, Jesse Puljujarvi or Patrick Laine, but, I guess I'm just more angry because I'm being selfish and I learned how to pronounce Patrick Laine and Jesse Puljujarvi, and now most likely Laine is going to end up in Winnipeg, and Puljujarvi will probably end up in Columbus, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes here. But I would have to say after, But when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres, we've talked about this ad nauseum by now, but you can really only be bad for so long before you have to wonder what you're doing wrong. And a lot of us last season, which I'm sure is something we've touched on before and we'll touch on again in the future, last season got to a point where in like January-ish, we were all wondering if there was going to be any progress. The team looked a little worse than they did the season before, but then they clicked, they took off, and again, now they're drafting 8th. I know it kind of sped that up a little fast, but it's not bad. I think it's going to benefit the team to know, hey, Jack and Sam play good together. You can put anybody with Ryan O'Reilly and they're going to be better. Evander Kane is probably best off with Ryan O'Reilly, but again, it's the same thing where you put anybody with O'Reilly and they're going to be better. But I think, call me crazy, but I think finding the true value of Johan Larsson last year or this most recent season, finding out his true value in Dan Bylsma's system, I think things like that, those minor victories, are going to end up being bigger in the long run. So yeah, Johan Larsson going on a late season tear for the last couple months and showing that he can be a true third line lockdown, shutdown center, and maybe making a guy like Zemgus Girgensons expendable. And don't get me wrong, Girgensons certainly is a player that could, if he stays in Buffalo, I'm not mad about it. But again, you have a guy who you want to fill the role, and then he goes off at the end of the season, and then you're like, oh, well, maybe now we know what we have, kind of. So maybe we have a little more currency at the draft or in the offseason to be better.
And with Larsson, what's amazing about what Larsson did at the end of the season, from the start of the season to the end of January, he only had 1 goal and 4 points. And then from the start of February to the end of the season, he put up 9 goals and finished the season, I think, with 18 points. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly positive. But, to go from being that bad early in the season, first 40, 50 games of the year, and then finishing with 9 goals in the last 30, that's saying something. And, with that line with Giante Larsson and Foligno, they built some very nice chemistry. Probably some of the best chemistry that the team saw all year out of any of their forwards, really. So Larsson, he definitely deserved that 1-year contract, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he can progress heading into next year.
And Johan Larsson is a smaller success story, I think, of the overall team. When it comes to, we say consistency with Johan Larsson, he became a more consistent hockey player. You look at the rest of the Buffalo Sabres, they were winning a lot more the second half of the season, but they were also more consistent. Even if they weren't winning games, they were still showing up. They were still imposing their will on other teams. Robin Lehner, before he ended his season abruptly, having some surgery on his ankle and his foot to get things cleared up for this season, this upcoming season already.
By the way, Larsson finished this season with 17 points in his final 20 games from February all the way to the end of the season. He finished with 9 goals and 3 assists.
That's amazing. That's a complete turnaround, and it earned him. Yeah, and it earned him a raise. Plus, he became what Dan Bylsma wanted Zemgus Girgensons to be early in the season. Like Girgensons, the talk of him was he was being that shutdown center to play it against the top two lines of another team. That's why his statistics were down. But then his shutdown play started to dwindle off, and he just wasn't. There was nothing there. And will he be a part of the Sabres next year? That's to be determined. That's something that we'll discuss probably on this podcast a few more times when we have MegaCat 2.0. I'm sure we'll discuss it as well. But that's one of the hotter topics of the offseason is guys like Zemgus Girgensons. But I want to focus on the positives here. The Buffalo Sabres did a very good job the second half of the season being more consistent in being better, which is just fun to watch. With how long the team has been bad for and how many bad players that have come onto the ice at the First Niagara Center over the past 3 or 4 seasons. It's nice to see some positive development. And it took, Sam Reinhart, Jack Eichel, Rasmus Ristolainen to do it, guys like that and more. But we're finally seeing the slowly but surely seeing the rewards of this long rebuild, of the patience that Tim Murray once pleaded us to have. It's nice to finally see it to pay off. And I mean, the Buffalo Sabres were 13 or 14 points, maybe a little more. I think it was like between 13 and 17 points out of. No, if I remember correctly, it was like 13 or 14 points out because it was like 7 or 8 wins out of a playoff spot. And they can go into the draft here in a couple weeks, about a month and a half from now, from recording time, and they can go get a decent prospect either to immediately play in Buffalo or to go and pad the system, pad the pipeline, and show up in a couple years when the Sabres are even better. So that brings me to my next question, Brayton. With the 8th overall pick, who is the guy, or who are some of the guys that you believe the Buffalo Sabres will be aiming for at number 8?
Well, I think it depends on what Tim Murray does before the draft. I know that he's talked about wanting to make a hockey deal, wanting to make a trade to acquire a quarterback defenseman. And he said at the end of the year press conference that there wasn't any defensemen really that were out there available for this year's draft that he wants to take at the 8th spot. There's a couple of names that are intriguing, but are they going to be there for Buffalo? Not entirely sure. The two top defensemen of this draft are Jacob Chychrun and Olli Juolevi, and there's talk that Chychrun could fall to Buffalo, even past Buffalo, and Buffalo would pass on Chychrun, which honestly I think would be a dumb assertion to make. But if Chychrun's gone, then there's Olli Juolevi as well, who plays with the London Knights in the Ontario Hockey League. Juolevi's maybe not as rough and tough as Chychrun could play. However, Juolevi's an extremely good puck passer, a puck-moving defenseman. He's a good skater. He's just as good of a skater as Jacob Chychrun is. I think Chychrun is still the best two-way defenseman. Is he a quarterback on the power play or a quarterback on the defense? Not necessarily, but he's still got a very good high ceiling to be a top 2, top 4 defenseman. And you look and when you want to look at a defensive core, you look at Buffalo's right now and you see, okay, you got Rasmus Ristolainen as your number 1. You've got a guy like Mark Pezic who could easily be up there. We saw what Casey Nelson could be. We saw what Brendan Gooley could be. But if you add a guy like Chychrun or Juolevi's going to complement Rasmus Ristolainen very well because, he's a good puck-moving guy, skates well. Not only that, but Juolevi, he's also Finnish, so there's going to be some chemistry there with having 2 Finnish defensemen back on the blue line, maybe your 1-2. It's even with Chychrun. I think Chychrun skates well enough where, Ristolainen may be able to be more responsible in the defensive end, and then he can rely on Chychrun to say, look, I'm going to go up, join the offensive rush. Are you okay? I think the defense is intriguing because if one of those 2 guys are there, you have to definitely think about it. But if, let's say, Tim Murray trades at the draft or before the draft, trades for one of those guys that we've talked about so long, Cam Fowler, Hampus Lindholm, Sami Vatanen, who I really don't know who he's going to trade for. I don't know who he's targeting. There's Kevin Shattenkirk's been rumored to be out there. Tyson Barrie's been reportedly shipped around, or he's been discussed in trades. But let's say the Sabres do make a trade for a defenseman. There's going to be a good amount of forwards that will be out there. You got your top 3, Matthews, Laine, Puljujärvi. Those guys, top 3, there's no way they're going to fall. Matthew Tkachuk, there are some people that say he could fall, but I don't think he's going to fall any farther than 6, and Calgary's picking 6. And then you've got a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois. He came about very, very he's had a very good season. I think earlier in the year this year in the preseason rankings, he wasn't even ranked in the top 20 or something like that. But he shot up. He's now the top-ranked North American skater by Central Scouting. He's my 5th ranked player at BLTDsports.com for my top 50 rankings. I think that there's a chance that he could fall to Buffalo, but if he falls to Buffalo, I think there's just no doubt about it. You've got to take a guy like Dubois. He was fantastic at the CHL Top Prospects game. He's been fantastic in the QMJHL playoffs, and he finished, I think, third in league scoring to end the year with the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles. Another guy that could be available is Alex Nylander. That's Willie Nylander's brother. If you want to talk about building a rivalry with the Leafs, you got Matthews and Eichel, two main faces of USA hockey coming up. And then you'd have Willie Nylander versus Alex Nylander. And I think that's a very good possibility that Nylander could be available for Buffalo. But the thing that with Nylander, he reminds me of Sam Reinhart, where he's very smart with the puck. He's got some good offensive skill. He's got a decent shot. I just don't know if the Sabres need another player like a Sam Reinhart. Because, and arguably, Alex Nylander is one of the top, he's probably top three smartest guys in this draft. I think that Austin Matthews is smarter or as smart as Nylander. But again, I don't think you necessarily need another Sam Reinhart on the team. So there's other guys that I'm looking at down the list, and there's a guy like Tyson Jost from the Penticton Bees in the BCHL, Clayton Keller out of the U.S. National Development Program. Keller's going to be going to BU next year, and also a guy like Michael McLeod from Mississauga, Alex Nylander's teammate and line mate with the Steelheads. There's a lot of names that you can look at going into the NHL draft. And it's all going to depend on where teams ahead of Buffalo are going to pick. But I was talking with a couple of people on Twitter earlier today, and we were talking about just who's going to be there at 8 and what the Sabres would do. And I brought up the point just saying, Buffalo's going to have their pick of the bunch right at the 8th pick. There's just, Buffalo's really in the right spot where, they'll have that top pick of the outside of the top 5 forwards. I mean, I think that Buffalo's in a very good spot. Sorry that I'm kind of going off on a little rant here, but I mean, I could go on forever about these guys. But yeah, there's a lot of people in Buffalo who's going to be very lucky to be picking right at the top of that, outside of the top 5 bunch of forwards that are going to go up high in the draft.
Well, that's why we ask the questions, Brayton. I mean, you can go off on whatever tangent you want to. It means I can talk less, which makes me happy because I'm not too confident that my voice is going to stick around for too much longer tonight. So I figured, ask you the good questions, let you go off on a rant, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, there's other guys down lower, especially in my rankings, that are likely going to go higher up in the draft. And other guys like Logan Brown from the Windsor Spitfires. He's a 6'6" center, 218 pounds. His second half of the season came along just really, really well. He played really well at the Under-18 World Championships in North Dakota. He was on, he was the second line center right behind a guy like Clayton Keller, he plays center, he plays left wing, but Keller's 5'10", 170 pounds, but I think that once he goes to BU, he's going to beef up a little bit. He's going to be tougher. I could just see Clayton Keller going 2-3 years at BU, being a top line player for them and being just stellar and becoming a very good playmaker. I mean, there's been comparisons to Clayton Keller. I heard a couple of comparisons that he could be the next Patrick Kane of the NHL. However, there's a difference between him and Kane because Kane was a top pick and Clayton Keller is not close to a top pick, but Keller has had comparisons of him being as good of a playmaker as Patrick Kane, but I think Kane, he's just a pure goal scorer. Kane skates really well. He's very, very skilled. So I'm extremely excited to see who falls to Buffalo at 8, and it'll be very interesting to see where Tim Murray goes in that direction at 8.
Now, looking at the draft overall, the Toronto Maple Leafs, unsurprisingly, won the draft lottery, won the right to draft Austin Matthews. Now, that's all fine and dandy. That horse has essentially been beaten dead by this point. But the thing I wanted to ask you tonight was about Steve Stamkos, because we've heard the rumors. We've heard the rumors Stamkos wants to apparently play in Toronto. Rumors he wants to play in Buffalo. But we've also heard, we've heard rumors. Again, everything's all rumored, so we're going to talk about it as if it's fact. Steve Stamkos reportedly does not want to move off of center, which, fair enough. You're a fantastic centerman. You want to play your position. Looking at Buffalo, you've got O'Reilly and Eichel. A lot of people have discussed it and thought that O'Reilly moves to right wing once Eichel's ready to move up to center one. But if you have a guy like Steve Stamkos, you can move O'Reilly over. Easy, whatever it may be. But with Toronto, looking at Toronto and seeing they have Nazem Kadri and Austin Matthews. And I don't know if Kadri can be moved, but I know you're not moving Austin Matthews to wing. So does this draft lottery win by Toronto essentially muddy the waters a little for them moving forward with this potential quest for Steven Stamkos?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what. With Steven Stamkos, I think there's 3 teams in this race that have the best chance of landing him. That is Buffalo, of course. I think Detroit has a good chance of landing him if Pavel Datsyuk decides to retire, and if that the Red Wings can move his contract to a team that needs that cap space to get up to the floor. And then another team that I think could land him, and it's not Toronto, it's Montreal. But here's the thing with Montreal. They, too, need to move a big contract. Now, who's that contract going to be? I don't know. It maybe PK Subban, which would be dumb. I don't know why they would want to do that. But, I think that those 3 teams are more favorable. I completely agree with some people like Darren Dreger. Nick Kyprios has said it. I've heard it from a couple of other sources that he does not want to go to Toronto. Like Toronto is not an option for him. Maybe that changes with Austin Matthews coming, but I really don't think it does. Not only that, but I've heard also that he does not want to go back to Tampa Bay, especially now since, we've seen Tampa Bay the way they've been playing without him. I think they've been playing just fine without him. So Steve Yzerman's going to look at that and with all intentions of, okay, well, my team's not playing horrible without you, but if you want to stay, we're willing to have you stay. But if you're going to ask for a lot of money, we're not going to give it to you. So I think Buffalo has the cap space now, especially now that they're not going to be selecting one of the top 3 picks in this year's draft. I think that means Stamkos is back in the picture. You just got to think about the future with Eichel, Reinhart, even Ristolainen coming up. If he's a restricted free agent, you need to pay him. But, this just intrigues me. I think that Stamkos still is in the picture for Buffalo, and I think he's probably got the best picture. I think Buffalo's got the best picture right now, unless there's one of those dark horse teams out there that could sign Stamkos. And I know you brought up the point with him not wanting to stray away from center, and I completely agree with that. And this is what I'd suggest if he were to come to Buffalo. Either A, move Ryan O'Reilly to the wing, or Jack Eichel to the wing. Now, here's my case for Eichel. Eichel this year on faceoffs was 41% average the entire season. Now, granted, that's not great, but he's a rookie. He can build up a little more size as the years go on here in Buffalo. And Ryan O'Reilly, you really don't want to move him away from center because he was 56.5% this year on faceoffs with Buffalo, and he's a 53% career faceoff winner in his entire career. And Steven Stamkos throughout his entire career is a 47.7% winner in faceoffs. So if you ask me what I would do if I was Dan Bilesma, I would see if, Jack Eichel would move to the off wing. I think that Eichel would play very well in the off wing just because, it's a little bit of an advantage for him because if he's on the left side and the puck gets over to him, he's going to release a shot much quicker. But no, I mean, I just think that if Stamkos will come here and he says, I want to play center, if I'm Dan Bilesma, I'm thinking, okay, well, I could either definitely move Ryan O'Reilly or Jack Eichel to the wing. And then if you need Ryan O'Reilly to win a key face-off, you have him win a key face-off, whether it's in the offensive zone, defensive zone, less than a minute left to go, what have you. But I still think Buffalo's a top 3 front runner for landing Steven Stamkos this offseason. And then the other teams, it's going to depend on if they can create space for him.
Hold on one second. I think my niece is going to come down here. I think she spotted me. She's up at the top of the stairs yelling my name. That might be a good time, though. I mean, it might be a good time to call the podcast to a draw or to a close here, because I mean, I don't really have any more questions for you, and I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk too much. Hold on. You want to say hi to the podcast?
Hi. Hi.
Hello,
I'm Delilah.
I'm Brayton.
And hello.
Hello.
My name's Delilah.
Tell Brayton
Hello,
who your favorite
Delilah.
hockey player is.
My favorite hockey player is Jack Eichel, and I really
Yeah.
love Jack Eichel, and he's so amazing. He's always winning. But
Yeah.
Dad's my favorite wrestling player. He always wins.
All right, say bye. I gotta end the podcast.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, Delilah.
So
Bye,
with that-
everybody.
With that being said, on the line, Brayton at Brayton BJ Wilson WGR on Twitter. You got to get back to work. I got to go watch some WWE Payback. I am at Wolfe BLTD on Twitter. Delilah does not have a Twitter yet.
I'm
Oh.
sick.
You're sick?
Yeah.
You want to tell everybody you're sick?
Guys, I'm sick, and I really have a cold.
No, me too.
So is Mom.
All right, say bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
All right, so we'll catch you guys soon. Brayton will do this again sometime soon, and maybe we'll have some guests. We'll talk more hockey and have some fun.
I love guests. Last time I had guests for my birthday.
And Delilah's still going to be telling stories. Well, Brayton, thank you for joining me. Glad we didn't get you in
Oh,
trouble.
of course. Oh, it's all right. I'm good.
And thank you for carrying the podcast tonight because I'm ill.
Well, thank you for getting me to do a podcast, and hopefully we get to do this again very, very soon.
Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night.
Bye.